Good morning, this is Luke with Austin's Appliance Service. Today we're going to be talking about appliance recommendations, which brands I recommend for which product. But before I get started, I did want to mention that, again, I am starting a YouTube channel. We're at about 30 subscribers. At about 50, it opens up some more options as far as doing live video there as well. And so it would be greatly appreciated if people from the Facebook page, could go over there, find the channel, and subscribe. Be a big help, because everything's based on subscribers over there and analytics and all that fun stuff. And trying to please the Facebook and YouTube overlords to try to make these things circulate and figure out how to play that game. But anyways, before we get started into the recommendations, I should kind of tell you how I recommend an appliance these days, because everybody knows that appliances today are not what they were 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. There was a time in the past where, hey, go get this one, it's bulletproof, and you probably won't ever have to call the repairman in the lifetime of the appliance. And that's not the case anymore. And so really when I recommend an appliance, I'm doing it based on damage control. I know it's going to break. So when it breaks, how expensive is it going to be? What are the things I'm typically seeing? What is actually going bad, and how much is it tend to take out of your wallet? That's really what I'm looking at when I make my recommendations. I'm not recommending anything that I can tell you, hey, go buy this, you'll never have a problem. That doesn't exist. Truth be told, it never really did. But, you usually got at least 10, 20 years out of something before you had a problem. Now, it might not be quite the case anymore. So, my recommendations, I actually printed them off from a list I had made before. And I thought I'd just go through them and kind of talk about the one I would buy and the one I wouldn't buy. So as far as refrigeration goes, the one I would recommend right now is a GE refrigerator. That one has had very little problem, if any that I can remember, of anything to do with the compressor or what's called the sealed system. The sealed system is essentially anything that carries Freon. So the compressor is the pump, the evaporator is the low side lines in the freezer, possibly in the fridge side too, and the condenser's in the back. That's the part you're supposed to vacuum out. But those three things make up the sealed system. If I have a good one of those, I've got a good fridge. And if I have a bad one of those, I got a bad fridge. GE seems to have the best one right now as far as sealed system issues. You're still probably going to have you might have a $50 fan, a $100 part here, these kinds of things. But what we're looking at is we're looking to avoid those costly repairs that essentially get you to the place where it's not even cost effective to fix. GE has been very good. And if I just had a blank check, that's what I'd be going to the store to buy. I'd be getting a GE refrigerator right now. The ones that I would absolutely avoid is, obviously you guys know I don't work on LG and Samsung. So you're going to have a hard time getting service on those. But also the Kenmore refrigerator, because most of those were built by LG. So that's what I would probably, the do's and don'ts of refrigeration. A dishwasher. Right now I tend to go towards the Bosch. It's a good dishwasher. It's not spectacular. It's not and as far as servicing, it's a little harder to service, to be honest. But really why I recommend a Bosch is that America has had to get on board with all this high efficiency stuff. It was regulated upon them that they essentially, appliance manufacturers have to play the high efficiency game. Bosch, being something out of overseas, they've been playing the high efficiency game a lot longer. In other words, they've had a lot longer to figure out and get the bugs out and figure out how to make a dishwasher wash dishes with less water. And so that's why I would recommend people go towards a Bosch dishwasher. They're not spectacular. People seem to say they do a good job, and they're really quiet. That's Bosch's claim to fame, is that they're really quiet. But my big thing with a Bosch is why I recommend them is they've already got the bugs out and figured out how to make a dishwasher work with less water. The one I would avoid in the dishwasher line, and I haven't seen much of it lately, maybe people have already kind of caught on, but there for a while, Electrolux was making a nightmare of a dishwasher, one that the water would leak down. They located the control directly below the door, so if the dishwasher leaks out of the door, where's the water go? On the control. Wasn't the brightest location. So the one I would say don't, the one I would avoid is an Electrolux dishwasher. Clothes washer. As far as a top loader goes, Speed Queen. They've been really good. And that Speed Queen washer has a 5-year warranty, which that is unheard of. I haven't seen a appliance manufacturer extend their warranty past a year it's been quite a few years. There was a time you got 1 year on everything, 5 years parts and labor on these parts, and 10 years on parts alone on these parts. There was a time you could expect to see that, but it's been many years where things are just 1 year. So I would probably just avoid anything that doesn't have a warranty of that type, which is pretty much everything else. It says a lot that Speed Queen's willing to put a 5-year warranty on theirs. But it's not even that. It's just, I have done very little to that washer. I've had to plug in a few lid locks, and I've had to torque down the drive nut on them, and that's about it. I have put on, I'm not even sure as far as parts go if I've had to put much on them. The only negative I would say is you're going to pay a big chunk of money up front. They do demand a bigger sticker. And so there is that thing. There is that to factor. What I would avoid in the top load washers, biggest thing is stuff that stay mainstream. Whirlpool, GE, Frigidaire, stay mainstream. Don't buy the Criterions. Don't buy the oddball. Yeah. Oh, but it's cheaper. Yeah, but you're probably going to have a hard time getting parts, getting service. I would just avoid those. There's some oddballs out there. Some things nobody's ever heard of. There's a reason. So that's probably what I would avoid. As far as a front loader goes, I would recommend a GE. The reason being is the bearings are the make it and break it of a front load washer. If I can keep good tub bearings in that washer, I've got a good washer. The day I've got to replace the bearings, I end up having to change the whole tub. Very expensive. And so as far as a front load washer goes, I'd go towards a GE. As far as the one I would avoid, if Bosch is still making one, I would stay away from that Bosch laundry. That was a nightmare. Also not a huge fan of the Electrolux. They've had a little more bearing issues, but they've got a lot of odd things going on within the electronics. And just as a statement as a general rule, Electrolux tends to be just kind of overall it's something I would kind of avoid. It's the high-end name of Frigidaire. Frigidaire's fine, but that Electrolux line is usually kind of a nightmare. Dryer, Whirlpool. A Whirlpool dryer, simple, basic, easy, and it works. And when I say Whirlpool bought out Maytag in 2006. And since then, when you're looking at a Maytag, you're looking at a Whirlpool. When you're looking at a Manna, you're looking at a Whirlpool. When you're looking at a Roper, you're looking at a Whirlpool. When you're looking at an Estate, you're looking at a Whirlpool. That Whirlpool name takes in a lot of, quite a broad amount of brands. Do your research. If you're curious what you're looking at, ask me. But a Whirlpool built dryer is a good dryer. Oven. This is probably the one that makes the least amount of difference. Your oven, it gets hot, right? We need the food to get hot. The burners on top get hot. The oven gets hot. There's the two simplest machines I work on are the dryer and the oven. They get the clothes hot. They get the food hot. And there's not some fine, there's not a real lot, you don't really need some really fine control there. I mean, with a refrigerator, now that just needs to get cold, but it doesn't really hold the same because you're looking to maintain things tight and within a tighter tolerance, but with an oven and a dryer, we're just getting hot. And particularly with an oven, a freestanding stove, you got 4 burners on top, maybe 5, you got an oven, it doesn't make a massive difference. Again, general rule, avoid LG and Samsung because you're not going to find service. Stay away from the oddities. Always better to stay with the mainstream stuff because that way I can get parts, I can get service. The parts aren't going to be ridiculously expensive. The parts aren't going to go out of stock inside of 5 years. Go with just the mainstream stuff. But ovens, I do recommend a GE because I've been seeing a little more burner switch failure with Whirlpools. Frigidaire, just as a general rule, they're fine. I'm not an anti-Frigidaire guy, but there's a reason you usually will pay a little less for a Frigidaire, is that they're usually built with a little cheaper material. A Frigidaire oven, it's quite common that I find Frigidaires where the handle's falling off. Same thing with their microwaves. The microwaves, the plastic busts on them. Or, if you've had a Frigidaire refrigerator, your door bins have probably cracked many times. There's a reason they cost a little less. But as far as an oven goes, the one I would recommend is a GE. And again, what I wouldn't, just any oddity, anything that's not mainstream. A cooktop, just a standalone cooktop. Now, this recommendation is if you just got a blank check and you're looking for the number one, right? As far as like a gas cooktop, a Viking. Now, Viking demands a big sticker. But they were always known to be high quality, and they are. There was 2 schools of thought when it came to high end. There's the high end that takes what's already been established and just uses better material and does a better job because they're doing it with better quality. And then there's the high end that tries to justify itself as being high end, add a bunch of extra junk, add a bunch of circuitry, do things in a very weird way. I worked on a Wolf cooktop one time that had solenoids that were dedicated to just the simmer. Like, we added these extra pieces to do things in a very backwards way. You could have accomplished the same thing with a simple burner valve like everybody else does. So anyways, as far as a cooktop goes, Viking. If you want the best cooktop, it's a Viking. But you're going to have sticker shock. And then as far as the ones I would stay away from, if you're talking high end, stay away from Thermador. Stay away from Wolf is kind of sometimes okay, sometimes it's awful. Thermador is usually a nightmare. But this is high end stuff, right? As far as the mainstreams, again, same rule of thumb. Stay away from LG, Samsung. Stay away from the oddities. Stay away from these brands that aren't the main. I mean, you're just making trouble for yourself in the future because they don't have as much of a parts inventory. You don't have the same amount of available service because there's guys that won't work on it. There are guys that aren't familiar with it. Maybe they come out, but they're kind of standing there scratching their head going, I don't really know. I'm not as familiar with this product. So just stay away from the oddities. Wall oven. I like Whirlpool, but again, ovens, they get hot, right? I mean, they make the food warm. And as long as they're staying within a certain temperature range, they're going to do all right. It's not as big a thing. So the Whirlpool, I tend to, as an overall, over the years, I've liked Whirlpool as a brand. They seem to be better with their customers. But as far as wall ovens go, it's not a huge difference. If you bought a Frigidaire, if you bought a GE, if you bought a Maytag, if you bought a, whatever, you're going to be all right. It's not the end of the world. I'm not, the big ones, the big ones are the refrigerator and the washer. Those 2 things, it's a big deal when you can't keep your food cold. It's a big deal when the laundry's piling up. But a wall oven is kind of an extra expenditure anyways, because if you got a wall oven, it means you've kind of laid out a kitchen that already also has a cooktop. And anyways, wall oven, yeah. Over the range microwave. Again, Whirlpool. And again, it's not a huge difference. The big thing is with microwaves is the quality of the plastic. Nobody's great. And honestly, with over the range microwaves, what I would tell you is don't spend a bunch of money. Don't spend extra money, and don't think that if I spend more, I'm getting more. You're not. You're not in most cases, but especially a microwave. Microwaves anymore, they're dying inside of 5-6 years a lot of times. And anytime I go out and have to diagnose that it has what's called a magnetron, the magnetron is what creates the microwave energy. It's like a radio antenna, because a microwave is a radio wave. It's called a microwave because of the speed it moves at is so fast. The wave signature is very quick and small. That's called a microwave. But it causes molecules to move, and that's how it heats. But anyways, so you got to change that magnetron, that little radio antenna, essentially. And you've already got the cost of the microwave put into it. I mean, that part usually gets to be $150, $200 pretty quick. You probably paid $300 for the microwave. By the time you pay me a service call to put it in, you're at the cost of a microwave. Upright freezer. Right now, there's not as many options as you think. There's only a couple that actually manufacture them. But of the ones that are out there, I tend to like Whirlpool. I will say Whirlpool has a lot of issues with their defrost drain line plugging up, but that's not a big a deal. You clear the line, you knock the ice out the bottom, you call me and I got the line cleared in 15 minutes or, whatever, but it's not a major failure. I have noticed they have a tendency to plug that line though. But it's not stopping the cooling process. You're not losing your food. You're just dealing with a little ice in the bottom of your freezer. And if most of the time your freezer's in the garage and it doesn't matter if it's leaking a little bit. But anyways, not a major thing. Looks like I've also got on here a chest freezer, which again, usually most people are buying the Frigidaire. I probably still would send you towards the Frigidaire. But again, you don't really have a ton of options within the freezers. There's only a couple people actually making them. But as far as a chest freezer goes, I'd probably go with the Frigidaire. As far as the things to avoid and the more recent stuff I said, so microwave, I would stay away from Frigidaire. They got plastic quality issues. Freezers, chest or upright, you don't have as many options as you think you do. There really isn't one to avoid because there's not only 2 or 3 manufacturers. They're mostly American. You're going to be all right. Stay away from the oddities. Stay away from Criterion. Stay away from Idea. Stay away from these names you've never heard of. They're store brands. They're usually a 1-year model. You're probably not going to be able to get parts in a few years for them. Just stay away from them. They're because you'll regret it in a few years when you can't get it fixed. So there's the list. And again, how I recommend things is not because this one won't give you problems. It's that when this one gives you problems, I can get parts, I can get service. It's not a terrible bill, and that's what we're looking to do. That's what I base my recommendations on. It's damage mitigation. It's not like I'm sending you to something that's not going to give you problems. It's that the problems that you're going to have, they're fixable. I can get parts, and they're not very costly. And so with that, do keep in mind, please, that, again, trying to get that YouTube channel up and going. There's like over 1,700 people following this page, and I think the YouTube channel's at like 30. It would help a lot because again, everything's based in subscribers. So if you guys could go over there and subscribe, I do want to start doing some things with videos in the future. Start utilizing that more. I may even start doing some instructional stuff, some do-it-yourself stuff, some things that are more edited. Everything I'm doing right now is just live and raw, and when someone comments on the video and I sit there and stall out, that's because someone commented, and it threw me off, and I'm reading the comment, and my brain had to shift gears for a minute. So at some point, I will look into probably doing YouTube videos in a more polished way, a little more edited. Right now, everything's just live, but anyways, I'm going to get to work, and you guys have a good day.